So welcome everyone. I'm Judy Black, president of Halifax Center, so welcome. As you know, we've been doing our sessions via Zoom, and we'll probably continue to do this into the new year until we hear otherwise that we can meet face-to-face again safely. Please note that this session is being recorded and that it will be posted on our RASC Halifax YouTube within the next 24 to 48 hours by Jerry. During the sessions that people are presenting, we will have a session at the end of each part to allow for questions. If you want to use the chat feature, please feel free to do so. To put your questions over there, and we'll track those and we'll ask them at the end of the each session. And I do believe that everyone here on the session is a member of our center, but I will go through this anyway in case this is viewed by those who are not. Certainly there are several perks on joining our center, or joining RASC actually. And one of them is you get to get your own copy of the Observer's Handbook. This is the 2020, although I understand the 2021 is now available and will be sent out fairly shortly, I would assume, to those that have already joined. Also part of your membership, you also get an Explore the Universe guide. It's a guide that of a observing program that not only members but also non-members can benefit from. Learn the night sky, everything from the moon to the stars to nebula to you name it, it's all in here. And it's an exciting program to get involved in to learn that night sky. Also, as a member, you get the latest edition of Sky News, which is the newsletter per se, or the magazine actually, of RASC, the National RASC. And there are some interesting articles in there. This is the latest one of it. Also, you get a subscription to the journal, and you can, for a fee, request the paper copy, which I finally got around to doing. And this latest edition has a couple of really interesting articles. One on the last great visual observer of Mars, and it's rather timely given how Mars is so prominent in our night sky and has been for a while. And also for those who are interested in light pollution, there's an interesting article here by, I believe it's, I'm probably gonna get his name wrong, Richard Dick, is that it? Anyways, on the impact of the brightness of light and the physical impact it has. So an interesting read there. That's the national benefit. For us here in Halifax Center, members also get an opportunity to receive our Nova Notes newsletter, also access to our observatory, which is out in St. Croix, and other resources that we have, such as our library, for instance. And of course, most amazing is this incredible network of individuals that we have within the center who are willing and always available to people who have questions and are willing to mentor new observers. So welcome everyone to today's meeting. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you the agenda today. So you may or may not be aware, but we have changed our agenda order. In the past, we've reserved our guest speaker for the last, when we had our face-to-face meetings, and that gave them an opportunity to actually meet members at the social time, which we don't have anymore on a Zoom session. So we decided that it was a great time to move the guest speaker up to the very front of our meetings. That would then allow them to stay on if they so chose, or they could go back about their own lives and leave the meeting at that point. The rest of our members' meeting is pretty much the same. We still have the outreach opportunities and Paul's Food for the Soul. You'll get the news from the board and the What's Up in the November Skies from Dave. Today we have a special video presentation on the Litchfield discussions regarding lunar observing programs of the RASC. And then Paul will give us a youth activity that he will tell us about when at that point in the meeting. And there's something new that we've introduced. Having a few of us have attended other centers' meetings, and one of the things that we thought was a really cool idea, given we're not meeting face to face, is to have something we've termed for now an Astro Chat, which means that at the end, the official end of our meeting after Paul's presentation, we will turn off the recording. So this part of the meeting will not be recorded or shared in any way. And members can stay on and chat about anything they'd like to chat about with anyone they'd like to chat with that's still online. For now, it's going to be a 30-minute extension of our meeting. We're going to see how that works out. If members find it of value, we will certainly continue to have it as part of our agenda for all our meetings, so that it's an unofficial part of it that is not recorded. So with that in mind, Glenn Roberts was supposed to be up right now, and I did reach out to him and tried to call him. I don't know if he'll be joining us today, so it may not happen. So for now, I think we'll go to Paul Heath. And Paul, if you could address the outreach opportunities at this point, if there are any, and if not, I'll put up your food for the soul.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, at the moment I'm working on 3 outreach events. I've been contacted by 3 different youth groups that we're trying to see if we can develop a program that'll fit with COVID and with their program. So I'm working on that at the moment. I'm also doing a classroom session for Halifax Rec at the North Preston Community Center. We have 8 young people involved, and it's basically an introductory 7-week. Well, we're going to extend it 1 week because we got snowed out on Tuesday. But the kids are learning how to use binoculars and telescopes. This week we were supposed to start constellations and identifying constellations. I'll push that to next week. But it's a really good group. They're really excited. They're doing really well on how to use binoculars. At least in the hallway. We haven't been able to get outside yet because of the clouds and snow. But that's going well. And if the program works well, then the East Preston Rec Center and the East Preston Grow With Us youth group are also interested in the same type of program. So it may develop into a continuous teaching session for young people. So I'm looking forward to that. So, but, my poem for tonight, as you can see behind me here, I've got a little 6-inch. I've been meaning for years to buy an outreach telescope that the young people can set up and work. And we had first light last weekend, and I had 3 young ladies, 7, 11, and 9, I think they were, and first time they'd ever looked through a telescope. And of course, Saturn was the main interest, like what does it really look like? And the poem sort of reflects what happened when they looked through the telescope for the first time.
Okay, I'll share my screen again, Paul. There you go.
Yeah. So, first light, first sight. Wow. A quiet whisper in the dark. Wow. With deep breath, a voice raised from the darkness. Wow. An eye locked upon a tiny window, absorbing light never witnessed before. I see it. I can see the rings. Up into the darkness, the voice is raised. Then silence. The silence of a long hunger ending. An unknown hunger, fed now with wonder. With slow reluctance, the voice stands. A long exhale. That's so cool. rushes out into the darkness. With hesitant retreat, a second shadow sits. Wow. A quiet whisper lifts from the darkness. That's three young ladies discovering the night sky.
Wonderful, Paul. Thanks so much for that. You could just hear the excitement by the way you read it too. Great. Next up is me with news from the board. Unless people have questions for Paul at all about this or the event that this triggered the poem, Okay.
Oh, they were all COVID family, so we didn't have to worry about ice distancing or whatever because they're all in the bubble.
Right. Okay. So updates from the board. You can certainly find everything you ever wanted to know about the center at our website at halifax.rasc.ca. And you can reach me at any point by that email address that you see there, president@halifax.rasc.ca. And if I've emailed you before, I'm sure you've got my personal email address as well. Some of you attended the members' meeting on requisition that was held on Saturday, October 24th. It was a special meeting called to determine whether or not we would go forward with the funding for electrification or putting in electricity at SCO. There were several presentations made, one by Roy Bishop regarding the history of the site. And he also happened to mention the 11 criteria that the Observatory Site Selection Committee had used in order to find SCO's site originally. They are there. The only one that we don't have at this point is the connection to electrical power. Yes, we have 2 solar panels and 2 deep cycle storage batteries, but we are not connected to an electrical line for power and for expanding the number of outlets, etc. I then went into a general description as to how we got to the October 24 meeting. Greg Dill provided the financial picture for the center, and John Ledard, as our SCO manager, provided a brief description as to what the actual project involved. And as you can see, actions going forward, it was a unanimous agreement at the meeting that we would go forward with the electrification of the site, and that we would do a members fundraising campaign to provide the additional dollars that are required for this project. The total amount required is about $15,000. The board has already committed $7,500 to it, and members should have already received an email regarding the request for funding to fund the additional $7,500. So the actions coming out of that meeting were we were to make a commitment to Minus Energy that the project would be going forward. That was done. John Woods of Minus Energy was sent an email on November 3rd. Members notified of outcome of meeting and deadline for donations and purchase of astrophotos, and that last part we'll get into in a bit. But the members meeting who attended the meeting were emailed the minutes for approval via SurveyMonkey on November the 3rd, and that was achieved. And then on November 5th, we sent an email to members regarding the donation request. So you should have received that 2 days ago. If it isn't in your inbox, check your junk mail, because that's sometimes where my mail goes. And in that email is how giving the email and mailing address to send the donations. Big shout out to Mary Lou Whitehorn for providing the cartoon depiction of SCO in holiday garb for the purposes of our fundraising campaign. Basically, well, first of all, our committee comprises Blair McDonald as chair, Matthew Dyer, Greg Dill, and myself. Basically, the whole purpose of this, and this was certainly reinforced at the members' meeting on requisition, or the MMOR, which I'll refer to it from now on, is to allow more members to use the facility and be comfortable while doing so. Okay, that perhaps if they need electricity for their equipment, it would be there for them to use. So basically, the donations are required to make sure that that project does come to fruition. And basically what we're trying to achieve is to wire St. Croix Observatory to the 2020 electrical code, not the one that was 25 years ago, and to be connected to the energy, to the minus energy power grid. How they can do that? By e-transfer to our treasurer at halifax.rasc.ca, and be sure to state in the notes field of that particular e-transfer that your monies are for the SCO upgrade, so that Greg, because this will be, Greg is the one that answers us and deposits it into our account, that let him know that it is for the SCO upgrade versus anything else that you may be sending him money for. You can also mail your check to our to the center. And if you haven't got a copy here, don't worry about it. If you look at Contact Us, the mailing address is on that page as well. And please note that our center is not a charitable, we can't offer charitable tax receipts because we aren't a charity at this particular location. Other centers are, but we are not. I mentioned earlier about the astro images. 3 folks so far, Blair McDonald, Judy Black, and Jason Dane, along with some other Halifax astroimagers that we have approached and are waiting to hear back from, will be donating their incredible photos, everything from deep sky to wide field and everything in between. We are going to be offering their photos of your choice. You can own one of them in an 8x10 print. It's a great present if you're looking for a gift for someone that's hard to buy for. We're trying to figure out a way in which we can make it as easy as possible for you to purchase these. So keep in mind, we will be letting you know via the announce list. It'll also be up on our website, probably front and center on our front page, so that you will be able to see this. So details will come in the following week. The other thing I want to mention about this is that as part of the fund development for the project, 2 companies have been approached, and both of them have agreed to host, if you will, an observing night, a special virtual observing evening, which all our members will be invited to, along with these companies' customers who are wanting to join us. So we'll keep you apprised of those as well. So observing certificates. You saw me hold up the Explore the Universe book, and that's the, plus the RASC pin. Well, we have another person very, very new to our center who recently completed it. And I know Dave Chapman has already announced it, but we'll announce it here officially as well. That Lisa Fanning from our center recently completed her Explore the Universe certificate. So congratulations, Lisa, for looking up and acquiring this. And just as a matter of note, if you think it's a difficult thing to do, Lisa joined us this past June or July, so she's a relatively new member. So it can be done, folks. For those of you that haven't already tried, you really should. Also, also we like to feature some of our Halifax Center stars. In other words, these are folks from our center who have received recognition both within the organization as well as outside. And one of the things that RASC is doing now is that winners of the RASC astroimaging certificates are going to be featured in their banner of the RASC Weekly that comes out weekly to every member that's in RASC across the country. So first up is M42 by Blair McDonald. So what happens is there's his photo, and there's the masthead using his photo on the RASC Weekly. So be prepared to look for other folk that have also getting their photos up on RASC Weekly. Also want to make note of, in the comment Neowise, and I may have gotten the wrong one. Nope, that was it. There are 2 articles in the recent edition of the journal, one by Blair MacDonald. Hearing a lot about him today, I gather. He has an article in it called Imager's Corner. And David Turner also provided a book review on The Lost Planets by John Wynne. So there's 2 Nova Scotians in the recent edition of the journal as well. So both interesting articles. As usual at this time of year, there's a general call for nominations. Our nominating committee, Peter Hurley is the chair with Chris Young and myself as members as well. Keeping in mind that our center abides by the RASC policy regarding inclusivity and diversity, and nominations for any of the board positions are welcomed. And the deadline for nominations is midnight, November 24. Now I say the deadline, this is the deadline by which, as of November 25th, those names will be put forward to the board to members and advertised. The next opportunity to make nominations will be at the AGM itself. So up for re-election, just so you know who's already up for, actually this is for election, not for nominations, but this is what has been put forward. We are open to further nominations. If anyone is willing to volunteer or would like to nominate someone with their approval, please let Peter know. So for re-election, I've offered to re-offer for president, Peter as secretary, Greg as treasurer, and 4 of our directors, Matt Dyer, Paul Heath, Wayne Harasimovich, and Dave Hoskin, have offered to re-offer. And then up for election is Pat Kelly as our vice president. And so far we have 2 directors who have agreed to have their names come forward, or 2 individuals who have had their names come forward as directors, both Kathy Walker and Tim Doucette. And again, the deadline for nominations is November 24. Agreed to stand for appointment or reappointment so far. Nova notes this year coming, in January, we'll have co-editors. John McPhee has agreed to be our editor, and Lisa Fanning, one of our newest members, has agreed to join us as the layout expert for John. So the 2 of them will be joining forces in the coming year. Mary Lou Whitehorn will be our honorary president again, and she's her nomination is actually valid until 2023, I believe. Dave Chapman has agreed to stand as observing chair for 1 more year. Paul Heath as outreach chair. Wayne has agreed for librarian, and Dave has also agreed to retain the position of chair as Dark Sky Preserve Committee, and I will retain the chair of the governance committee. But we do need a chair for the Nova East Planning Committee. I am stepping down from that role. I won't be leaving the committee, but we do need a Nova East Planning Committee chair. And just for anyone who has never sat on the committee but would like to be involved, this is a really great group to work with. It's a great team. They're dedicated to this project and work really well together. So if you'd like to join them or would like to offer your services as chair of this, please come forward. We welcome you. RASC calendars. The 2021 is out now. There's only a limited number here in the center for sale, so get yours now. It makes a great Christmas present, or perhaps or other holiday present, or a birthday present coming up. Who knows? They're $25. That includes shipping and handling. You can e-transfer it to our secretary, or treasurer rather, at treasurer@halifax.rasc.ca. Please make a note there of the fact that it's for the calendar so that they can distinguish it from other sales. Also want to point out that there were 3 of our members, Keith Egger, Jason Dane, and Fiona Morris, who have photos in the 2021 calendar. So it's a must-have. So there's only a limited number left, so please place your orders soon. At the national office, there is 3 new staff members. Samantha Jewett, who is an astronomy outreach assistant. Reem Khalifa, who is the new communications and marketing person. For those who are familiar with Eric Wickham, he has left the RASC as of the beginning of October, I believe. But Reem is replacing him, and Nick Hammer is an environmental outreach intern. Come January, there will be a new database at RASC. Yay! It has several features, integrated form and a listserv hybrid. And for those of you that are computer literate, which I am not, it means a listserv with a form view. So if you understand that, great. If not, perhaps you can explain to other members who don't. But there's an integrated work group facilitation so that various work groups can chat with each other at different levels. There's also wonderfully an auto renew option so that you can set it up so that every year your membership can be automatically renewed without you having to remember. Although I'm sure that there must be a notification saying you still want to join. And then there's a document library which allows you to search the whole website for any word or phrase so that everything that's on the site related to that selection can be found. It makes searching the site so much easier. So that'll be exciting. I'm sure we're going to hear more come January. So I showed you all the things, the perks that you get from joining RASC. Well, how do you do it? Well, to join the Halifax Center, you first of all must join RASC nationally and then request that you are affiliated with our center. So you join online, you click there, and actually to find this particular site, you go to our halifax.rasc.ca and look at About Us, and it shows you how to become a member. So you can join online, or you can click on form and print the form and mail it in, your choice. Okay, so that's how you join us. So if you're not a member, which I think someone just fessed up to a little while ago, please do so. With respect to coming up, well, as I mentioned earlier in this talk, certainly new is the Astro Chat. So for those of you that would like to stay online afterwards and talk about anything and everything under the sun, please stay online and join us. And again, I'll repeat that it is not recorded. We will stop the recording at the end of the members' meeting. The November 9, just a reminder for anyone who would like to submit an article for inclusion in the December edition of Nova Notes, please provide them to Charles White or to me if you don't know Charles's email address. So that's the deadline. November 26th is our next Board of Directors meeting. And coming into December, our members meeting in AGM is on the 5th. Keeping in mind that the members meeting will be greatly abbreviated from what it is now because the AGM takes the vast majority of our time, but please join us. And the virtual observing sessions, we'll keep you posted on that. And don't forget to look at the RASC national site. If you go to rasc.ca and look at their online activities, this is November, so you can see how they've got special presentations from various centers, as well as from National RASC itself on special presentations and classes and meetings. So check it out. Any questions?
Yeah. Does anybody know what that form thing means? Is Dave Lane on board or?
No. Yeah, the phrase was listserv with a forum view.
I think it means it's sort of a blend of the two, where there will be an online component that probably functions similarly to the listserv we have now, but that's just conjecture on my part.
Okay, and there were a couple of other questions that came through in the chat. With respect to the membership, I'm not sure if National currently reminds people of the renewal. I don't ever recall receiving one, but
I usually get mine a month before.
yeah, so maybe they already do provide something a month before, but I'm sure that under the new website that they will certainly, I would hope that they would have something along that line. Also the question about how much has been pledged towards the SCO upgrade to date. At the last check-in, there was, of the 7,500, there was about 3,200 or 3,400 in that neighborhood that have already been donated. I guess I should also note that any monies raised above and beyond the 7,500, in fact, all these monies raised for the SCO upgrade, will be put into a special line item on our budget for SCO, so that all monies raised will be kept in that line, so that'll go towards the upgrade, as well as kept for future maintenance, future upgrades or enhancements that the board or members have identified as being important, so that these monies will be protected. They will not go into general coffers for spending in other ways. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of that. Okay. All right. So with that, are there any other questions? I don't think I see any. All right, with that, Dave, I will make sure that you can access, there we go. So you're up with the what's up, or yeah, what's up?
Well, hello. What's up for November? Well, geez, it seems like we're a long ways through November. Of course, this goes up every month on the 1st, so it's always on our website from the 1st, regardless of when our meeting is. So I'll just go through it. I have links in the presentation that's coming up, but I'm not going to follow them during the presentation. But I will point them out, and if you would like to follow those links to access more information, all you need to do is go to the RASC Halifax website, and the presentation is available on the homepage as a PDF, and the links are active in the PDF. So you will be able to go there after the fact and follow up those links. So what's up this month? Lots. So I always start out with the sun, because the sun defines our day. So one of the things you'll notice this month is, well, standard time is already in effect as of last Sunday. So this is always good news for astronomers because it gets dark earlier. Everyone else seems to get grumpy about that, but astronomers celebrate. So these days, sunset's quite early, around 5 o'clock or earlier, and dusk end comes at 20 past 6. And so you can get out there and start observing in the darkness. And it's more than 10 hours of darkness. The flip side of having an earlier sunset is you get an earlier sunrise. So it's now bright again in the morning. I don't know if anyone else notices this, but leading up to the time change, the mornings get very, very dark and quite gloomy. And then after the time change, I shouldn't say the time change, it's the clock change. The time remains the same, the clock change. After the clock change, the mornings get bright again. And one little factoid about standard time and daylight time. I understand, I haven't followed this up. I understand that Yukon stayed on daylight time, so they're on permanent daylight saving time, I guess. So that was news to me. I didn't see that coming, but I guess they decided to do that some time ago. So I don't know if that's in the store for the rest of us, but I looked into it, and I think that if we had that, I'm in favor of doing away with daylight saving time, but I'm not in favor of going on permanent daylight time. Because I figured out that in the darkest part of the year, our children would be going to school in the dark, and they would be watching the sunrise while they were in their classrooms. And I think that's just a little bit too late. for Nova Scotians to be watching the sunrise. So if we do abandon daylight time, I think we should just go to standard time. Anyhow, that's my rant for the day. But you see, the sunlight is getting shorter and shorter, so we're well below 10 hours a day, which means that most things that are growing stop growing outside anyway. And the sun is getting lower and lower in the sky. So sometime next month, we're heading towards the winter solstice, and sometime next month we'll have the solstice. And after that, it's going to get brighter again. So anyhow, so you can see I have these little graphics here showing little pie charts showing the night and day and dawn, which I came up with. And if you want to watch that as a video, you can follow that to the RASC Halifax YouTube channel, and you can watch. I made a video of that, so you can watch how it changes throughout the year. The other link that's on this page at the top is today's solar activity, which will take you to a page where you can see the sun, what the sun looks like in all kinds of different wavelengths, even ones that you can't visualize, like radio, that kind of thing. There's a fairly big sunspot group on the sun right now. So if you do have a telescope equipped for safe solar viewing, you might want to look at the sun before it sets today. I mean, it'll be there tomorrow too, but there's a nice sunspot group. Okay, moving right along. The moon this month. What is it? Last quarter is tomorrow, and then we're in the animal fattening time of the Mi'kmaq, and that's what other people call hunter's moon or hunter's time, whatever. And if you follow that link there, the name in Mi'kmaq is Wigewigus. And if you follow that link in the presentation, it'll take you to a video of Curtis Michael teaching you how to say that in Mi'kmaq, and he says a little bit more about animal fattening time. I was looking at the moon this morning. It's very high up in the sky at sunrise, almost overhead, so it's not hard to find. And you can actually get up, at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, whip out a telescope or binoculars and have a nice view of the moon before the sun comes up. It's a nice time to observe the moon if you can manage to get up. I know a lot of people don't like to do that on the weekend, but there you have it. So I'm going to have a few diagrams of this coming up, but involving the moon. The moon will be passing Venus and Mercury on November the 13th. And of course, they're in the morning sky. So again, you have to get up, I would say for that, probably at least a half an hour before sunrise to see Mercury. Venus is pretty easy to find. Mercury needs a bit of a darker sky. The following day, it is at perigee, which is when it's closest to Earth. And the following day after that, it's new moon. So the combination of new moon and perigee means you get large tides. Now, new moon, normally you get what's called spring tides, which has nothing to do with the season spring. But when the moon is also at perigee or near perigee, you get sort of extra large tides. So that is that's something to look forward to if you live near the ocean. And that is the start of the next Mi'kmaq moon time, which is rivers freezing over. And that is Keptewikus. And again, you can follow that link on the presentation to learn about the pronunciation of that.
Karas Orana Shaipo.
Sorry about that. Okay. Now, in the evening sky, when the moon gets back into the evening sky around the 18th or 19th, and the moon will be near Jupiter and Saturn in the evening over those 2 nights. No real close conjunctions, but a nice trio. I'll have more to say about Jupiter and Saturn later. And the first quarter is on the 21st and 22nd. And again, moon will pass Mars late in November, the 25th. Now, I'll say more about Mars later. And in the 27th, moon passes Uranus, which is a good opportunity to find Uranus in your binoculars if you've never found it before, if you're looking for it. And those are evening events. And then the full moon, of course, is on the last day of November. And that will be the full moon of the rivers freezing over time. Okay, in terms of observing the moon, in Explore the Universe, there is a small set of lunar features that you have to find. There are 12 maria and 12 craters, of which you only have to find a half each. So I always promote looking at the moon at first quarter, because that's when you can see the most things in good relief. Of course, you can observe the moon at any phase and you know, help yourself to observing the moon. But if you're going to pick a day to do it, first quarter is a nice one, because all of these craters and Mare show up nicely. So the challenge there is, if you're working on Explore the Universe, try to observe the moon this month. It doesn't matter when, but obviously it'll be easier in the evening. And at first quarter, you'll be able to knock off almost everything you need. If you could get one night with the moon, you could get everything you need. Now the planets. So Mercury's in the morning sky, and it has the greatest elongation west soon, November 10th. It's pretty low in the east at dawn, though. It's not a particularly good apparition. But I think if you do want to try, there's a bit of a trio there, and I have it illustrated on the 13th, Friday the 13th of November in the morning. You will see Venus, the moon, and Mercury. And what you need to do is find yourself a low eastern horizon for that. But that's perhaps a photo opportunity for someone, or just an observing opportunity. I have a place I can go not far from my house. I can't do this from the house, but I have a place that's not far that I can go to make this observation. And for this one, the moon moves pretty quickly. So like the next day, it'll be gone from that apparition. So if it's cloudy that day, you miss out. But Venus is still quite bright. It's getting lower in the sky, but when you get up, even if it's almost sunrise, you can easily pick out Venus in the sky. It's like the brightest thing in the sky now, next to the moon. Mars is in the evening sky, so you don't have to wait up. It's past opposition. You have to wait. You don't have to wait up so long to see it. I was, waiting up until 2 in the morning for it to rise over my house. I don't have to wait up so long now. It's on its way out, but it's still worth observing if you can. I haven't had a good view of it for a while, but I hope I'm going to get another one. It's a little bit dimmer than Jupiter now, and it's shrinking fairly quickly from about 20 seconds of arc down to 15 seconds of arc. So it's getting smaller in the eyepiece. And the next time we're going to have an opposition like this is 2035. So I think Liz said she was going to go for Mars. I hope you get a good view of Mars, Liz, because, you will be able to see it on other oppositions, but like it has been lately, it's not going to be for a while. So, and I mentioned Jupiter and Saturn. They're fairly low in the southwestern evening sky. And I mentioned that they're close to the moon on the 18th and 19th. So Jupiter and Saturn are worth keeping an eye on, even if just visually, like when you go out in the evening, because they're getting closer and closer together, and they're headed towards a close conjunction on December 21st. And by close conjunction, I can't remember the actual number, but if you look at Jupiter and Saturn on December 21st in a telescope with a reasonable amount of magnification, you'll be able to see both planets and their satellites and the rings of Saturn all in the same field of view. That's pretty cool. I'll have more to say about that next month, but it'll just be fun during this month, just watching them getting closer and closer in the sky as when you go outside at dusk. Neptune is still an evening sky. It's been pretty constant in magnitude and its disk size. It doesn't change too much. And Uranus will be at a binocular field with the moon on the 27th of November. It's, in a dark sky, it's almost naked eye, but not many of us have dark skies. So it's nice in a telescope if you can get it in a telescope. So here's some pictures of the things that we're going to see. I have the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn here on 2 nights. And I apologize for Pluto appearing there, but the software I use still thinks Pluto is a planet. So when you want to label the planets, it throws Pluto in for good measure. Now Pluto, I mean, yes, it's there, but it's extremely dim. Try for it if you like, but I think I've only managed to identify it once, and it was questionable. So it's very dim, and it's getting dimmer as well. So I think there might be a date around now where Jupiter and Pluto are very close together, so you could almost use Jupiter to find Pluto. I haven't looked into that though. And down there on November 27th, I've shown you here the binocular field of the moon. Now this is in the morning now, right? Hold it, wait a second. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. I have to check that. Did I say it was November 27th? There's something wrong. There's something wrong with this picture. Maybe it's not at dawn. That's the thing. Maybe it's more in the evening, but I'll have to double check that, see if I made a mistake. Let me just go back a second here. I said it's in the binocular field with the moon on November 27th, and it looks like the moon is waxing gibbous. And yeah, well, maybe it doesn't show up until the dawn. So the moon would be almost setting at dawn to be in the same field as Uranus. Maybe I'm right. Okay. The other thing coming up this month is the Leonid meteor shower. It's the nights of the 17th and the 18th, or the 17th going into 18th. Now, it's not a really prolific meteor shower, but it has very fast meteors and they have long-lasting trains. The sky will be free of the moon for this meteor shower. The only thing about the Leonids is it's not very high up in the sky when dusk starts. You really have to wait quite late in the evening for the radiant to be above the horizon. So it's kind of a late night, early morning thing. So I'm guessing you have to be a really a keener. I can't remember what day of the week that is. I think it's midweek. So you have to be a real keener or retired like me, I guess. And the parent comet for that is Temple Tuttle. Okay, did I do that right? Okay, now I want to talk a bit about Explore the Universe. And before I go into that, I just want to, I know Lisa's listening, watching, and we announced her getting the certificate and pin. Congratulations again. The one thing about Lisa, Judy mentioned that she did join our center this year. And I want to add something to that story. Lisa was a participant in the online Explore the Universe kind of course that Jenna Hines and John Reed put on every other Thursday, and she got involved in that and was kind of helped along by various people and encouraged. And through that process, she joined the RASC. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but I think it was me who said, if you're going to join the RASC, and she lives in New Jersey, by the way, if you're going to join the RASC, you might as well join the Halifax Center, because that's where all the cool people are.
You
And she
twisted
did.
my arm. You totally twisted.
So I'm taking credit for that.
As you
That she
should.
joined us. She's very enthusiastic, and apparently she just got a telescope from somebody. And Lisa, you're going to be doing some pretty serious observing with that telescope, eh?
Yeah, it's about a 5-foot tall Dobsonian that was
Wow.
wrapped in a friend's garage, and he said, "Here, enjoy it."
Okay. So like you're going to be like maybe doing Explore the Moon, or maybe looking at some Messier objects, or
Well, yeah, I'm definitely. I've already started Explore the Moon with my small telescope, but now
oh, that's great.
that
Yeah.
game got better.
Well, great. So, so the autumn constellations are still up there: Pegasus, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Perseus, and Aries. Aries is a bit of the wild. He's like which one doesn't belong, because it's a kind of a Aries is a bit of a minor constellation, although it is very connected with the ecliptic and the zodiac and everything. So maybe that's one reason to keep it. The rest of them are all involved in the famous legend of Andromeda and Cassiopeia, Perseus, and some other constellations that aren't listed here, but are the Cetus the whale and Cepheus the king, and that's a great legend. And if you look at the portion of the sky that's governed by the constellations associated with that legend, it's a pretty big piece of real estate. Anyway, not hard to find any of those. In terms of stars, there are no really, I'm going to go on a limb, first magnitude stars here. They're all kind of like second magnitude stars, or dimmer. And in Explore the Universe, you know, I think the brightest one is Mirfac, which is Alpha Persei. And then there's Hamal Alpheratz, which is the Alpheratz is the principal star in Andromeda, even though it's one of the corners of the square of Pegasus. So how do you like that? Algol's there, the famous variable star. Quite a few of those stars are navigation stars. They're marked by N's. And all of them, just for those people who have SynScan telescopes, all of those stars are all of those stars are actually alignment stars for the SynScan telescope. And again, Aries gets 2 stars. Go figure. Somebody must really like Aries. Anyway, not hard to find, especially now, this time of the fall. Next month, we'll be going into the winter, okay, in December.
And
Hello?
going back to Algol, it's also in the list for the variable stars, along with Myra. So
you mean in the
it's an
Explore
optional
Universe?
item in the
It is, yeah. Observing the variability of Algol is a
option.
is an optional activity that few people actually do. But it is also, just to identify it, is a target. If you were interested in the variability of Algol, in the Observer's Handbook, it has the times of the minima of Algol, which has a very regular period. So on these long autumn and winter nights, you can actually, if you pick your date right, you can actually watch Algol dim and or brighten over the period of an evening. So that's something, if you're interested in seeing that, there's a long enough period of time at a civilized hour to actually watch that. As far as the deep sky objects are concerned, there's not a ton in Explore the Universe for the fall. The Andromeda Galaxy is an obvious one. All of these, of course, are observable in binoculars. Double cluster is a fine one. And something called Melot 20, which is also called the Alpha Persei Association. So if you put your binoculars on Perseus, Alpha Perseus, you see this very rich, broad star cluster, which is a fairly close star cluster. So it's spread out, but it's one of the few things that are actually better to look at in binoculars than a telescope, because it's so spread out. In the photograph to the right, which I took, you can actually see Mel 20. You can see the little cluster around Alpha there, and you can see the double cluster. I took that picture at Blomidon when I was there in August on the weekend that should have been Nova East. I went there, and I had some interesting times there. It's not called Blow Me Down for nothing, let's just say. But I got some nice observations and then that nice picture there. So the challenge is go and look for those. It's easy to find the Andromeda Galaxy, but go look for the double cluster in Melot 20. Now, double stars, again, one is in one of them is in Taurus, which you have to wait a little bit later in the night to pick up in the autumn. Delta Cepheus is a double star. It's also a classic variable star. And for some reason, they included a star in Cygnus in the autumn double stars. Maybe they couldn't find enough. To me, that's a summer constellation, but there you go. There you have it. And there's the brightnesses of the stars and their separations, easily seen in binoculars. There's a photograph of Delta Cepheus. So everything in Explore the Universe is binocular observable. You could use a small telescope if you wanted, but you can do everything visually or with binoculars. You don't need a telescope. Some things, they may look nicer in a telescope, but not necessary. What was I going to say before I finish? I wanted to say something about the Double Star program. I think in an upcoming meeting, I think Melody and I are going to, Melody Hamilton and I are going to maybe do a short presentation on the new RASC Double Star program. We won't do a long presentation on it, but we'll just kind of introduce it. And she and I have both been working through it with our telescopes at home, and it's a lot of fun. You don't have to wait. I mean, it's up there now. If you go to the RASC webpage, there's a new page, RASC Double Star Observing Program. All of the material is there to be downloaded and enjoyed. I've been having a lot of fun with it. What I do is I'm here in the city and I'm using my telescope, and I find my way to the star field. I figure out what the double star is supposed to be. If in doubt, sometimes I'm not exactly sure, but what I do is, it's usually pretty obvious. But what I do is I sketch the field, which is easy. Sketching a star field is very easy because it doesn't require any artistic skill whatsoever. All you do is you put dots on a paper. Some dots might be bigger than others, but you just basically sketch the star field. And then if you have a driven telescope, you just see how the where the stars drift out of the field of view, and that defines your western direction to get you oriented. And so what I do is I figure out where I'm supposed to go. I sketch the field, and I usually do 2 or 3 at a time. And I come back inside, and then I look up. There's a kind of a supplement to this double star program that tells you what all the components are and their brightness, and you sort of see if you found the thing that you were supposed to look for. and it's kind of fun because it's partially discovery, but you're not totally in the dark. You know, there's a backup thing there where you can instantly figure out if you saw what you were supposed to see. You only have to see components A and B. Like there are multiple star systems with up to 4, but you only really have to see A and B to check off the observation. I've done about 20. I've been doing them while I'm waiting for Mars. I get my telescope set up, and while I'm waiting for Mars, I knock off a few double stars. It's a lot of fun. Okay. So that brings me to the end of my What's Up. Are there any questions?
Dave, when you questioned about what time Uranus was north of the moon on November 27, in the Observer's Handbook, it said it was there at 17 hours UT.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a morning, it would be a morning thing. It wouldn't be exactly north, but it would be in the same binocular field in the morning before. You'd have to get up early to see that. But if you're looking for Uranus, that's where it would be. So the moon is sort of drifting through the field of Uranus. But anyhow.
I have a what was up comment.
Yes.
This morning at 4 minutes after midnight, in theory, there was a transit of the ISS in front of the moon.
Oh, yeah.
My location, and it was cloudy. But
so you observed a transit of the clouds in front of the ISS in front of the moon?
Yes, I could observe that at my leisure because it was quite dominant. But,
yeah. Well, that's remarkable that there was such an event, and not very surprising that you didn't see it.
We have a nice web page that shows you when the next transit will be, if you want to look at that, but it's only good for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, you look like you're drifting a bit there amongst the stars. Yes.
Falling, yeah.
Yeah, you feel a bit weightless, or
I'm a little high right now.
Yeah, so
I'm up at 4:45 if anyone wants a phone call to me to be able to go look for Uranus.
I've found it myself. I mean, all of these weeks when I've been looking for Mars, it's been not that far from Mars, so I often go up there and have a look while I'm waiting. Even when I find Mars, sometimes the seeing on Mars is seeing of the atmosphere is very poor, and so I'll wait an hour or two to see if things improve, which sometimes happens, sometimes not. So the point is, I'm out trying to observe Mars, but I find things to fill in the time while I'm out there. So are there any other questions about the What's Up? Okay, we're done then.
Great, thanks, Dave. All right, next up is something called the Litchfield discussion. This was a video that was produced earlier this fall. Melody Hamilton and I got together at her home in Litchfield, just outside of Digby, to discuss the lunar observing programs that RASC offers. And there are 3 programs, 2 dedicated to lunar observing, and 1 has a component of it. As those that have completed the ETU know, there's a component of lunar observing, but there's also 2 other programs, the Explore the Moon, both telescope and binocular versions, as well as the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program, which is much more detailed and an exciting program to actually be involved in. So Melody and I decided it would be a great thing if we let people know about these programs, what was involved, and also provide a mechanism by which we can encourage people to not only observe, but to record what they're observing and the importance of that. So this is a 24-minute video, or 23.5-minute video roughly. So it's called the Litchfield discussion. So I'm going to share my screen so that you folks can now view it. And certainly we'll entertain questions at the end of this session. thanks so much, Melody, for inviting me out for. We had coffee earlier, but at least we'll have our water now.
Welcome to Litchfield.
Yeah, thank you. I've entitled this the Litchfield Discussions. One of the things we wanted to do was to go through the RASC lunar observing program. Just have a brief discussion about what they're all about, just so people know what to expect and how simple it really is. So, how long have you been observing? When did you become an observer?
2010.
So you've been at it 4 years longer than I have. That's why I rely on your expertise.
Oh.
So this is focusing on the moon. Why should we observe the moon?
Well, I've heard people complain that when the moon is in the sky, they can't do deep sky. But if the moon is going to be in the sky for 2 weeks out of 4, having that moon light, why not study the moon? Why not look at the moon? Always something to look at, whether it's moonlit or deep sky dark.
True, it's easy to find too.
Mm-hmm. And it's our closest neighbor.
It is. And regardless of whether you're in the city or out here in your beautiful dark sky area, you can still observe it.
You can.
Which then leads me to my next question. You've heard me use the term observe. And I know that there is a difference between, yeah, I see it, and yes, I'm observing it. What's the difference?
Okay, so I would describe the difference, Judy, as when you look at something in the sky, oh, isn't that lovely? And the next step that you could take is you identify. Look on a map or looking on Sky Safari to identify what you're looking at. And the step further than that would be to put your observation down on paper, which includes, for me, a sketch. So when you're putting your observation on paper, date, time, where you are, the object you're looking at, what the sky conditions are, and a sketch because that requires you to look a little bit longer and I think really fully appreciate this moment that you are observing something in real time, not a photograph, this is real time. This is starlight coming into your eye.
And watching how the seeing and transparency actually shift what you're seeing slightly. Sometimes ever so slightly, other times a lot, but you still see that same object under different variations of light.
Yeah. So by looking at something, identifying it, and then observing to the point of putting your observation on paper, sketching is optional, but I love sketching. And I know you do.
Yes. Okay. I know that the very first certificate that I earned was Observe the Moon. And it was in a binocular version, I might add, because at that point I really wasn't into telescopes to any great degree, and plus I was learning how to observe. So that we'll get into that one in a minute, but the one program that anybody can do, whether you're a RASC member or not, is the Explore the Universe. And in that is a section called Observing the Moon. There are 32 pieces that you can view on the moon, everything from the lunar phases to the basins or the mare, as well as the impact craters that they list. You only have to do 16 of the 32 to complete that section, yes.
Those are also transferable to other programs for the moon. If you do those observations, they're transferable to Isabel Williamson. And
yeah, that's the program that I basically started to sketch, and I use that term loosely. I guess that's one thing we should discuss in terms of sketching, but we'll get into, maybe we can discuss that now.
Well, first thing I would like to say that sketching does not require talent. That would be lovely, but it's not a requirement.
Yeah. I can appreciate that, yes.
A sketch is only to record your own observation for yourself.
Yeah.
So whether it's you do it to your own standard. You don't. It's not to anybody else's standard.
Yeah, it's to elicit that memory too. I mean,
Mhm.
the sketch is attached to your log.
Yeah.
It knows date, time, what equipment you use, the conditions of the night or day, depending on when
Yeah.
that moon is up, so that it elicits that memory back again when you go back 2-3 years or longer. Oh yeah, I remember that because of something special, or maybe not so special, but that you still remember it. I know that when it was suggested to me to sketch, and they use the word draw, and I used to say that there's a disconnect somewhere between here and here. They just don't match. What I see and what I draw do not match each other. But over the time, and I think it's learned, as you can appreciate, it's something that you start very, very basic and then build up. And you get better at it as time goes on and as you practice it, as with any skill. Right? So what encouraged you to, or made you decide to start sketching with everything you observe?
It happened one night when I was just beginning to explore the universe. And that was about 18 months after I first got my binoculars. And one of my favorite things to end the evening observing was Kemble's Cascade. So for 1.5 years, I had been looking at Kemble's Cascade with binoculars. And then I started Explore the Universe. And I was recording. I had observing sheets, and I was recording when and where and what I was doing. My first sketch was Venus, and there was a dot in the middle. That was it, just a dot in the middle of the circle. So this was page 4, and I did Kemble's Cascade, and well, I did the upper part, and then the lower part, and I thought, oh, there's something in the middle there. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'll have to put another eyepiece in. And when I did, there was an open cluster, a beautiful open cluster, NGC 1502. I had missed that for 1.5 years.
Wow.
But the night that I was sketching, I found it. And that changed everything. That changed the way I look at the sky. And I realized that night that by sketching, I was looking just that little bit deeper.
Neat. Neat. So, Explore the Universe is a very basic, easy program for anyone to pick up.
Mhm.
We go from there to Observe the Moon, which we mentioned earlier, and there's 2 versions. There's the telescope as well as the binocular.
Yeah.
You've got the certificate for the telescope version. I've got the one for the binocular. It shows you where we both were when that program came out. My sketches are very vague, so to speak, in terms of, because of the degree of detail you're able to pick out with a pair of binoculars.
Yes.
And at that point I had 10 by 30s, so detail wasn't great. But you had a telescope that allowed you to go right onto the lunar surface, correct?
I used the 120 millimeter, my little sky watcher for that.
And it's and for Observe the Moon, and I'm reading this because I don't want to forget, for the Observe the Moon telescope version, there are 94 required, so there are 8 optionals that you can do. But for the binocular, there are 40 features, period. There are no optionals because it's a much shorter list, as you can appreciate. And I thought the 40 items were daunting until I started recently, well, not so recently, the Explore the Moon telescope version. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because you get to know a lot about the moon, don't you?
Yes.
Things like the geology, as you're reading about these features, the names of the geography in terms of crater wall versus rill versus valley versus rime versus katina, all those sorts of terms that you're going, huh?
Yeah.
But you are learning them. So it's kind of neat that way to do that. Then we come to your and my favorite program. You've already received your certificate for it, and I'm still working diligently on mine. And it's the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program. Is it for a more experienced observer or not?
I would like to quote Dave Chapman here. Dave said, "Observing difficulty is relative to experience. He feels that the Isabel Williamson lunar observing program is not hard, but it takes preparation, a detailed lunar chart, good optics, careful observation, especially for the fine details, accurate reporting, patience, and diligence." And I would like to add inclement weather to that list. Because when you plan from one night to the next, the weather is certainly a major factor. And when we're observing deep sky, the shift of the seasons is fairly slow. You've got, if you're looking for something deep sky and you don't find it tonight, well, you could go out next week or next month and see if you can find it. That's not true with the moon. If you don't find it tonight, you have to wait till next month. And then next month comes and it's cloudy, so then you have to wait for the next month. So that's what Dave says here, that it does take good planning.
Yeah, and hopefully the sky gods are with you. Okay, now you mentioned guides. There are a few that people can use. For instance, Isabel Williamson does refer to RUCOL, right?
Yes, this is the book that is referenced all through the program.
Now, just so that people that are going to be watching this video recognize that this is no longer in print, so unfortunately, it is a bit of a pricey item to obtain.
Yeah.
But apparently, National has something on their site that is based on that you can download, and it's basically the same maps. So if you can't get the RUCOL, that there is something on the Isabel Williamson program that you can download.
Yeah.
So that's good. So I've got the RUCOL at home, but I've also got this one, which is the Charles Wood and Maurice Collins Atlas of the Moon. And it's equally as good. It's got various general pictures as well as specific crater pictures in it, so it's quite worthwhile. And then we get into the electronic stuff.
Oh.
You use a program.
I use the Moon Atlas on the iPad, and I used it more than the RUCOL. If something wasn't in the Moon Atlas, then I would look it up on the RUCOL. So the RUCOL actually always was at the observatory with me.
Right, and yeah, the RUCOL is, and I've got the Moon Atlas as well as Moon Globe.
Oh, Moon Globe.
And when it comes to when is moonrise, moon set, I use something called photopills to figure that out as well. So, because from our backyard, it's limited view compared to your beautiful skyline that you've got out here. And of course, I think you and I both were talking about sketching. This is a program that, although it's not required, it's highly recommended that you do. And of course, you and I are both sketchers, and we have, and I think we both highlighted some sketches that we wanted to point out with the various things. And we're talking about, I was showing you earlier 2 sketches that I had. That one I drew back in August of 2017 when I was first getting into Explore the Moon. And it was with the northern limb showing Babbage and Harpalis in Mare Frigoris, as well as Fuso. And it was very, very elementary, shall we say, compared to the diagram that I drew 2 years later in March of 2019, which is highly detailed. So it is something that you can keep as simple as you want, or you can develop your skills and make it more detailed, right?
That's right.
And you have something there that you wanted to
Well,
point out as well.
I have to say that sketching does improve a little bit over the months and years. And my first observation for Isabel Williamson was in 2013. Okay. So this was a 7-year project. But I set it aside at times to do other things, and then would pick it up again. So I have a sketch here of one of my very first ones, and then the last observation I made was Mare Netris. And I can see a difference in what I wrote, my reporting, and the sketch is a little bit better, I think. But the sketch is still for yourself anyway.
That's right. Yeah. Of course, along with the now Isabel Williamson has, if I get the numbers right here, 135 objects. Now, some of those objects are singular, some of them are multiples, but nonetheless, there are 135 areas of the moon that they want you to look at. But along with that, they've got some optionals.
Oh, yes.
One of them being librations.
Oh,
Tell us a bit about that.
well, when we observe the moon, from our perspective, it looks like it wobbles, but it really doesn't. It's just our perspective. But what the libration does is it reveals a little bit more of the limb in a particular direction. And the Sky Atlas has a map of the libration, what dates through the month where the moon is tilted toward us. But sometimes the Terminator covers it, so that isn't any good then. I have to wait till it's illuminated and tilted. But there are also, it's also in the observer's handbook, a little dot beside the moon, which it tells that the libration is at that point, at that time.
Also, if you own a copy of the RASC calendar, the little picture of the moon every day has a little dot as to where that libration is as well beside it. So it's a real quick, easy reference there too. So there's two RASC sources to find out where that libration is. But as you said, making sure that it's not on the Terminator. The second section, of course, is the Canadian connection craters. There's 7 of them. I've only got 2 done so far. I consider myself lucky that I found them.
I think I have 4 done.
Yeah, because these are optionals.
Yeah.
And then there's this wonderful beast called the Lunar 1000 Challenge, which thank you very much for providing the copy for me. So it's big enough to actually read.
Yes, and to write things in.
Yes, exactly. But so far, I know you haven't counted yours, but I've been counting mine because I figured out how much do I have left? I've got 424 so far, so I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
So there are 3 optional sections: the lunar librations, the Canadian connection craters, as well as the Lunar 1000 Challenge. So if you're bored with doing the 135, there are other things
yes.
you can't be doing with that program. So what kind of logbooks do you maintain? I mean, obviously the programs have one, but are there other logbooks that you maintain?
I just use the programs, and I like to have one observation has a whole sheet. I like to have lots of room to write. And when I printed off originally the Isabel Williamson, it was double-sided, and I got about 12 targets completed, and I realized that isn't enough room. So I had it reprinted and just one side, because some of the challenge observations in Isabel Williamson, it's nice to have another space to sketch and to write notes, because I needed more than just that little bit of space. And the other thing I use is my journal. This is the book that's closest to my heart. Everything I do, everywhere we go, everybody that visits us goes into my journal, and also lots of sketches. So that's the 2 things I use. What about you, Judy?
Well, I do maintain books, as you can see. This is Isabel Williamson. This was Explore the Universe. I do have another one that I maintain specifically for the moon. So this was the programs once I've got the certificate, along with just general observing of the moon over the years, so that all my lunar observations are in one. But I also maintain this big beast, which I consider my general astronomy log. And there's a couple of things that I do within it. One is all the objects that I observe are alphabetized. If it's a constellation, I use the 3-letter acronym for it, so that's what I use to alphabetize it with. comets, so just comet, that sort of thing. But these are my general observing, so that for instance, any observation I had, say, regarding Aquila is here under Aquila. So I've got 3 pages for Aquila. There's some other ones like Jupiter. I think I've got 19 pages on Jupiter. So it's all here, so I can very quick reference it. But the other thing I do is I maintain a logbook like you do, sort of, except I wait until my evening is finished and I enter it electronically into the date, the time, where I was, and then the objects. Was it constellations, the moon? Was it asterisms? What stars? What clusters? And I actually separated out the Messier objects for some strange reason.
I'm impressed.
So that's the way that I maintain my logs. But I'm sure we can both agree that however way you wish to do it
Absolutely.
is your way of doing it, right? It's how our brains work and how we keep track of things, right? True. So do you need special paper and pencils to when you sketch? Do you use anything special?
No. The Isabel Williamson, an artist friend of mine, suggested a light cardstock because it was easy to sketch on and because it erased well without leaving any smudges. So I switched to a light cardstock for that. But normally it's just paper, and my favorite pencils come from Staples. And these are HB number 2.
Yeah, and I took your lead, and I use them too, and they're wonderful.
Yeah.
They actually do erase beautifully when you want to, and they do the shading nicely too.
And you do need a good eraser.
Yes, there is that.
And that's it. Not very fancy. It would be lovely to actually have some instruction about what pencils to use for what and how to shade and that. But that hasn't happened, so.
But as you said, it's all personalized, and it's a
Yeah.
matter of, I think the only tip, if you'll pardon the pun in a moment, that I used was one from Nova East at one point when they used a Q-tip to smudge the pencil so that it was more
Right.
evenly smudged, so to speak, in the lighter grays, or even the darker grays for that matter too. But anyways, logging, observing, sketching, it's all part of the experience, isn't it?
It is. It's a wonderful experience.
Well, thanks so much for inviting us up here today and having this wonderful discussion. It's been wonderful. Thank you. And hopefully people that are watching this will pick up one of these programs, be it for the universe, one of the versions of Observe the Moon, or the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program, because they're all great programs to
They are.
participate in.
They are.
Thanks, Melody.
Thanks, Judy. Also in the Observer's Handbook, month to month, month to month.
That's right.
So there you have it. It was a lot of fun doing that. I would like to thank my husband for being there and using our 2 iPhones to actually do the videography for that. It was a lot of fun. Melody and I just wanted to make sure that people understood what the 3 programs were about, and that it isn't a great challenge, but as the quote from Dave Chapman said, it does take time, patience, diligence, etc. to do these. But I'm sure all of us can agree that we're here because we do that. So it's not something we don't already do. So any questions? Okay, I'm going to just check the chat line because I didn't have an opportunity. Yeah, I apologize. I keep forgetting that when I mute me so that you can't hear other shuffling of papers and whatnot, that it mutes the video. So I apologize for that. I'll work under the assumption that when Jerry does this recording, that he will insert the actual video, so you won't have that dead space. Am I correct in that, Jerry?
We could do that, or we could just put a link to the actual video.
Either
Yeah, we'll do something.
we will. Okay. So last but not least is Paul Heath, and he's got an activity for us this week, or this month. So Paul, what are you going to show us?
One of the things I had difficulties with a brand new telescope in Nova Scotia is we went about an hour and it started to dew up. So I need to build a dew shield for my new telescope. And basically it's fairly simple. It's some of you remember Clint, he was pretty prominent in doing this for everybody. You need just basic camp foam, a thin layer of camp foam that you can wrap around the top half of your telescope, as in this one. It would just go around the top and extend up past the top of your telescope. As well, you need a nice piece of felt. Black felt is a good one, a dark base to prevent the scattering of light. And you glue the felt to the inside of your foam. With the foam, you cut the piece so it goes around your scope and overlaps at least, have an overlap of at least 1.5 inches. That way you can put a strip of Velcro on either side so you can take it off and put it in your car, transport it a lot easier. The distance from here to here, if you've got a 6 inch, as in this case, I will make this 1 foot long plus 3 inches. And the 3 inches will be this distance here. So it will sit straight on the end of your telescope. So I'll have a 15-inch piece of foam, because you'd use 2 inches of height for every inch of diameter of your mirror on your scope, or the diameter of your scope. That way, when it's sitting on the end, if you can see, this portion at the top will get wet. The dew will collect in the felt at the top, but the bottom portion will stay dry. So by the time the air reaches your mirror, in the case of a Daub, your secondary mirror, or in the Cassegrain, the primary, the moisture is gone from the air, so there's less chance of the optics dewing up. It's fairly straightforward to make, fairly inexpensive, and it's a good fun project for somebody. For a child could get it done for their small scope, or even us old guys can get one. I have dew shields for my binoculars. I have dew shields for my finder scopes as well. And it does give you, especially in the wintertime, I find I get an extra 1 to 2 hours observing time before my mirrors frost up or dew up. And it's cheaper than getting the electronics and the fans all geared up on your scope. That's sort of the next step for more tech-savvy individuals that are working with remote control telescopes, etc. But it's a fairly straightforward project. A thin piece of sometimes this is considered yoga mat, that sort of thin layer of foam. The felt, I think this big piece cost me $1.50 in the fabric store. Very inexpensive. And white glue, the trick is to put it down and weight it down, because it takes a while to dry onto the foam. But once it dries, it's on the foam. You put it, I personally stitch the Velcro on for my large scope. I stitch the Velcro so it's all together so it doesn't slide. And then I can wrap it around and lock it on to the end of my scope. And it does really help. It's a simple process, and it allows you an extra couple hours of observing, especially in Nova Scotia weather in the spring when it's really moist, or in the winter when it's really cold. You want to prevent the frost. And it's cheaper than trying to find fans and dew heaters and all the electronic aspects. So hopefully you can make that up in probably an afternoon. You'd be able to build it for all your scopes, and I would recommend it for your finder scope as well, put your finder scope, make a small one for your finder. Again, wrap it around and extend it twice the diameter of your finder scope, and it helps all the way around. And it works for the big binoculars, the 15 by 70s. I have dew shields for that. It works great.
Paul, the question came in, was on my refractor, there's already a 5-inch extension on the scope beyond the objective lens. Would this still be needed? It would extend well beyond the objective. Also, does one handle, how does one handle dew on the finder scope?
Well, with the finder scope, basically I try to get one of those little hand fans. That's because you don't want to wipe it. That if you've got any coating on it, eventually you're going to wipe the coating right off. But depending on the quality of your finder scope, I found just a small dew shield on the end, and then you've got the small piece, a fan just blowing on the eyepiece end of the finder scope will clear that enough to give you a quick view. So you can get those handheld fans in the dollar store that work not too bad. But I find that the fan, the larger the mirror or the lens, the harder the little fan works. So a dew shield will be good on the big end, and then on the small end, you can use the fan to clear your finder scope with that. I hope that answers the question.
The second part, but if they already have an extension, if I have an extension, would they need this?
I've seen people add the felt to those extensions, and what they do is just put a little collar of foam to attach the felt to and let it come down. So you slide it into your extension, because most extensions collapse down for travel, but they slide it in, and just the foam holds the felt in place so that it sits on the inside. Because basically what you're trying to do, the extension increases the airflow distance, but you want something to try to, especially in Nova Scotia, you want to try to absorb that moisture so that there's very little moisture by the time it reaches your mirror or your secondary mirror, whichever the case. So adding the little bit of felt on the inside, making a ring of felt on your extension will probably improve that 5-inch extension. So with what diameter of mirror is that 5-inch? Is it a 4-inch mirror, or is it on a 6 or 8-inch? That's because I usually notice the extensions don't mate, like they aren't the 2 inches like we recommend for this.
Right. Yeah, they didn't stipulate that here, but there were a couple of other comments. One from Jerry saying, I think the length of the dew shield extension depends somewhat on how close to the zenith you're pointing. And the second one regarding the, Dave Hoskins says, I use a 12-volt hairdryer to supplement his dew shields and dew heaters. So that if necessary on site, if you have that capacity, you can use it.
I've seen a lot of people in the wintertime use a hairdryer because you need that extra like oomph in the frost in the wintertime. But I think with the zenith, for looking straight up, that's why I used to just wrap it around and put a bungee cord on it, but then you find that it splays, so you get an opening with airflow and that, or it squishes in at the top. I found when you put the Velcro on it, it makes a stable cone. So it's like looking at a solid extension of your tube. So with the 10-inch scope, I've got a 12-inch dew shield on top, and it's nice and stable now that I Velcro it on the side, because it forms a column. So that's why I use the Velcro to hold them together, because using bungee cord or tape, it tends to bend the foam, so you don't get a straight line. So at the zenith, you close in your optics. You want to keep that cone of light the same.
Another question came in about any comments on dew shield heaters.
Well, the dew shield, that's sort of the next level up from what I'm doing here with the felt and the foam. And different companies make different dew shields, but it's pretty well customized to the scope itself. You can order them for your scope. So I think a lot of people do that with, especially with if they're doing photography or that, they've got a high-end telescope that tracks. They want to go with the electronic dew shields that they have more control of with it. I've never had a scope with electronic dew shield, so I'm not really familiar how well they work. Someone like Blair would probably have a better idea of how effective they are for the winter here in Nova Scotia and the spring and that.
Okay. And Dave Hoskins says, dew heaters are very easy do-it-yourself projects.
Yeah. If you're electronically apt. I'll stick to glue and staples.
Any other questions for Paul? Okay. With that, that's the end of our official meeting. So thanks everyone for coming this afternoon on such a glorious day here in Nova Scotia. And hopefully point south with you, Lisa, and other members from this below the 49th parallel. Although this is the end of the official meeting, I'm going to stop the recording in about half a second, and members are welcome to stay online and open up their mics and have a chat for the next half hour. We're early, which is kind of neat. It's 20 to 3 roughly. So we can certainly stay online for a while and have a talk. So thank you all for coming, and recording is now stopped.